Ever since the Sukkot meeting that I was at, my spirit was stirred about various things. Various things being taught in the movement over the last 4 years, maybe more. And a lot of confusion, because a lot of people don't know what are you being grafted into, and what are Ephraimites supposed to do? How does an Ephraimite fit into this thing? Okay? And because of all the confusion, we have all kinds of teaching ranging from Ephraimites what Ephraimites should or shouldn't do, or whether this movement should or shouldn't be Jewish, or what it should be or what it shouldn't be, and so on. And sat down this morning, to do my last-minute preparations for the Galatians class, get all my word studies in order, and it wasn't happening. Everything in my mind was this. I really feel like that Yahweh wanted me to cover this. I believe the congregation needs to hear it, so I will probably be covering this twice. I'll probably be covering this now, and those of you that are here now will probably hear it again at some point in the future when I get an opportunity to address the congregation on the issue, because most of the congregation is not here today. How many true faiths are there? One. According to Ephesians chapter 4, there's one faith. How many times was that one faith given? One time, according to Jude. Somewhere in the first 3 verses of Jude, it says the faith was once and for all time given. Now that totally contradicts the theology out there, by the way, especially in dispensationalism, that says that there are 2 true faiths, one that came along and supplanted the other. All right? That the old Judaism is the old faith, and Christianity is the new faith that comes along and replaces it. The New Testament itself contradicts that theology with just 2 verses right there. So how old is Christianity as a religion? Anybody? Give me a figure, a day, a time, anything.
About 135 AD. So it really got going around the time
135 AD. Any other figures? Anybody will? Let's give it. Let's just for a moment, for argument's sake, give them everything they asked for and say 32 AD or whatever. You understand what I'm saying? First century, 2,000 years old. Now we have a problem. Doesn't that make Christianity several thousand years old to be the one true, several thousand years too young to be the one true faith that was once and for all time given? Maybe it is that Yeshua didn't come to create a new religion. He came to be the Messiah of the old one. Okay? Because does the Torah allow us to create new religions? It would be a Torah violation to create a new religion, wouldn't it be? So if Yeshua came to create a new religion, he was a Torah violator and he wasn't the Messiah anyway. Okay? So, Yeshua didn't come to create a new religion. He came to be the Messiah of the religion that was already there. All right. Now, let's talk about this word Christian for a minute. The word Christian appears how many times in the Bible? 3 times. Okay? It's amazing. I get some of these study Bibles and whatnot, and I can't remember which study Bible, but there's one that gives the topic of each of Paul's epistles and each of the different books of the New Testament. And for each of almost every one of Paul's epistles, it gives the subject matter of Paul's epistle as Christian living. How many times do we know of that the word Christian came from the lips of Paul? Or from the pen of Paul? How many times did Paul use the word Christian? Once?
Sure. Don't be ashamed if someone calls you.
That's not Paul. Let's keep it. 0. Paul never... How many times did Paul call himself a Christian? How many times did he call himself a Jew? I can't count the number of times. I cannot count the number of times Paul... How many times did he call himself a Pharisee in the present tense? Does anybody know?
A bunch of times.
1. Well, it said Pharisee. He said, I was a Pharisee a number of times, but one in Acts, he says, I am a Pharisee.
That was just before his death, wasn't it?
No, it was Acts 24, I believe. Pull it up here. Acts... He's before the Sanhedrin. He notes that there's a he makes mention of the resurrection. I think it's chapter 23 maybe, or 24. It's the chapter just
Right here.
23. 23:6. And Paul knew that some of the people were of the Zedekim, or Sadducees, and others were of the Parashim, the Pharisees. And he cried out in the assembly, "Men, my brothers, I am a Pharisee." People accuse me of being a Pharisee. They said, "Oh, you're a Pharisee." I said, "Yes." Quote them, "I am a Pharisee." Paul, Acts 23:6. Now, but when did he ever say he was a Christian? Never. The word Christian appears 3 times in the New Testament, and all 3 times, get this, all 3 times, it's non-believers using the term. Now the time where Kepha uses it, he's referring to non-believers using the term. Okay? The first case is in Acts 11, I believe it is, where it says they were first called Christians at Antioch. It didn't say they called themselves Christians. And then later, Paul's arguing to, making an argument to, was it Agrippa? And he says, he said, it's Herod Agrippa that says that he would become a Christian. But it's Herod Agrippa that's using the term. That's in Acts 26:28. And the last one is in one of Kepha's letters. I got the reference here. I know I've got it in this first chapter here. Okay, does anybody know where the Peter reference is?
1 Peter 4:16.
1 Peter 4:16. If you're using the HRV, we got the books back in the original order, so Peter will be before, well, you're going to want to say.
So, Brother Trump, what is that term in the Aramaic that we actually use?
It's literally transliterated Christian. Christianos or whatever, yeah. It's literally, yeah. That's interesting because the Aramaic word for Christian is Mishiche. So it's really expressing here that it's a Greek speaker using the term.
What does it mean?
Calling them that.
Real meaning?
Christ one. Christ one. No, Christ one. Christ one. And this is the other thing. It was almost always used. I think it was always used to as a. Not only is it. This is what I was about to get to. It was a derogatory term. Believers never called themselves Christians at that time. It was a derogatory term that non-believers were calling them. Okay? And then the last case is 1 Peter 4:16 or 1 Kepha 4:16. But if he suffers as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify Eloah in his name. Okay? Kepha identifies being called a Christian with what? Suffering. Now he says don't complain about it, okay? But I'm going to use another derogatory term here. I hope nobody's insulted by my usage of this derogatory term, but it's to give you an idea of how insane it is to interpret this passage to mean that we should be calling ourselves Christians. If Martin Luther King had been speaking and he said, but if anyone suffers being called a nigger, let him not be ashamed. Would that mean that African Americans should then start calling themselves that and take that term upon themselves and say, Martin Luther King was saying that we should call ourselves this? No, he was saying that you shouldn't be ashamed and embarrassed when people call you that. Okay? In every case, the context of the usage of the word Christian is somebody else calling them that. All 3 cases. Now, how can it be that you can say Paul's talking about Christian living where he never even uses the word? Talk about reading something into the text. All right. Now, how did a Christian religion get started? As a new and different religion from Judaism. Even Halley's Bible Handbook, and it's, I don't have it with me, but Halley's Bible Handbook, actually I think I do. No, I don't. Halley's Bible Handbook, in its commentary on the book of Hebrews, tries to claim that Christianity was a sect of Judaism until 70 CE when the temple was destroyed. But and they're very close on the date when Christianity became a new and different religion, but not quite. Christianity became a new and different religion in 98 CE. And I'm going to tell you the wherefores and the hows and the whodunit. There's a guy named Ignatius. Those of you that are members of Todd, when Bob was speaking a few weeks ago, and he was talking about the Sabbath, and he pointed out that the Church of Christ Campbellite speaker that he had gotten sent this tape that he listened to about how Sunday was really the Sabbath and so on. And part of the tape said the guy couldn't present much biblical evidence. The guy that was speaking had admitted that his biblical case was very weak. But then he immediately went to church fathers, starting with Ignatius. And I don't know, some people noticed in the audience I was laughing. You're going to find out why I was laughing. Ignatius was the founder of Christianity. In 98 CE. Okay. Now Paul forewarned. Paul forewarned in Acts 20, chapter 20, verses 29 through 30. Acts 20, 29 through 30. I know that after I am gone, fierce wolves will enter in among you without mercy upon the flock. You know, I've got this little cartoon at home. It's got these this flock of sheep, and you can tell they're not real sheep because they're all they have stitches on their costumes, and you can tell they're just sheep costumes because you can see the stitches and the seams and everything. It's real obvious. And two of the sheep are standing up, and they have their masks off, and they're standing up in the middle of the flock talking to each other, and they're both wolves. And one of them is saying to the other one, "Gee, isn't anybody here a real sheep?" Verse 30, and also from among yourselves will rise up men speaking perverse things, so that they might turn away the Talmudim to follow after them. Because of this you should be vigilant and remember that for 3 years I cease not by night. Okay, anyway, that's the point. It's that Paul was forewarning that after his death, things were going to go south.
This one says, speaking shall rise, speaking distorted teachings.
Yeah. Okay, now, what was Paul's headquarters? What was his home congregation? Anybody know? Antioch. All his missionary journeys were being operated out of Antioch. Now, Antioch was the center of the Gentile movement, if you will, okay? In Syria, by the way, Antioch is the capital of Syria, so what was the language of people in Antioch? Syriac, which is a dialect of Aramaic, not Greek. All right, so these Paul is coming and going from Antioch, his home congregation. Now, we know that those that have studied with us in the past know that there were these vicious rumors floating around that Paul was teaching against Torah. And everywhere Paul went, he was constantly having to set the story straight. As soon as Paul died, who was the first new bishop of Antioch after Paul's death? Anybody know? Ignatius. Now, prior to Paul's death, prior to Ignatius becoming bishop of Antioch in 98 CE, prior to that event, when there was an issue, a problem that came up at Antioch, where did they go to get it solved? Jerusalem. The Council of Jerusalem. Shalom. Have a seat. Come on in. We're foregoing the end of Galatians just to let you guys know. We're going to come back and do the end of Galatians next week. Something really important that I felt like I needed to share is what I'm teaching instead right now.
Brother Jim, I was just wondering, what date did you put at Saul's death? Did he die in 68 AD?
63.
63?
63, I believe. Make sure. I may have that at 68. Oh, 66. Split the difference. 66 is what I got. That's what I found when I did my research. Of course, it may be arguable, for sure. All right. Now, Ignatius then, okay, prior to that event, okay, where did you go to get a problem resolved? You went to the Jerusalem Council, and which was headed by Yaakov HaTzadik, James the Just, and there was like a Nazarene Sanhedrin there. In Acts chapter 15, we have a problem, comes up at Antioch, they take it to Jerusalem to settle it within the structure of Nazarene Judaism, if you will, okay? Now, what happens as soon as Ignatius takes office as bishop of Antioch? He starts sending out letters all over the world. And he declares certain things in these letters that I'll just read a few quotes from some of his letters that he sent off to express. First thing he did was he declared that the local bishop was the ultimate authority of a congregation. No longer was Antioch going to report to Jerusalem. They were seceding. So he says, being subject to your bishop, run together according to the will of God. I'm not going to use any sacred names, and I don't feel any need to dress up Ignatius. Okay. Run together according to the will of God. Jesus is sent by the will of the Father, as the bishops are by the will of Jesus Christ. Elsewhere he writes, your bishop, I think you happy who are so joined to him as the church is to Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ is to the Father. Let us take heed, therefore, that we not set ourselves against the bishop, that we may be subject to God. We ought to look upon the bishop even as we would upon the Lord himself. Obey your bishop presiding in the place of God. Be you united to your bishop. He that does anything without the bishop is not pure in his conscience. Do nothing without the bishop. See that you all follow your bishop as Jesus Christ the Father. Wow. So now, this is a power grab. He's a bishop. As soon as he takes office, he declares the bishop is the ultimate authority, and he doesn't have to report to anybody else anymore. In fact, he stands in the place of God himself. Sort of a mini Antichrist. Okay? And then, get this. This is what he writes. Be not deceived with strange doctrines, nor with old fables which are unprofitable. For if we still continue to live according to the Jewish law, we do confess ourselves not to have received grace. Let us learn to live according to the rules of Christianity. For whoever is called by any other name besides this, he is not of God. It is absurd to name Jesus Christ and to Judaize. For the Christian religion did not embrace the Jewish, but the Jewish the Christian. Okay. He also wrote, but if any one shall preach the Jewish law unto you, hearken not unto him. Okay, so you can see this secession that took place at Antioch in 98 CE when Ignatius takes office. So, the fact that you can trace Sunday worship to Ignatius and try and make that a case is laughable. That's why when that case was being made or was being presented, I was laughing. It was just laughable. Oh wow, so you proved that the great apostate, Ignatius, first moved the Sabbath to Sunday. Wonderful. Let me get that information. I'd like to add it to my notes, okay? So, now there's something else interesting about this year 98, because not only did Ignatius take office and do the things I said that he did in 98, but Hegesippus the Nazarene, who's one of the few Nazarene writers that we have, none of his writings actually survive, but they're quoted by Eusebius in his ecclesiastical history. And Eusebius tells us some of the things that Hegesippus the Nazarene wrote. Hegesippus lived around 185. Okay, he was a Nazarene writer around the year 185. He says, he's writing about the death of Shimon, who was the second Nasi of the Nazarene Sanhedrin, if you will, or as the Gentiles would say, the second bishop of Jerusalem, following James the Just, Yaakov HaTzadik. Okay? Shimon was also one of Yeshua's brothers, just like Yehuda had been. Up until that death took place, Shimon died in 98 CE, same year that Ignatius rises to power, takes office. Shimon dies. And this is what Hegesippus writes. Up to that period, 98 CE, the assembly had remained like a virgin, pure and uncorrupted. For if there were any persons who were disposed to tamper with the wholesome rule of the proclaiming of salvation, they still lurked in some dark place of concealment or other. But when the sacred band of emissaries had in various ways closed their lives, and that generation of men to whom it had been vouchsafed to listen to godlike wisdom with their own ears had passed away, then did the confederacy of godless error take its rise through the treachery of false teachers, who, seeing that none of the emissaries any longer survived, at length attempted with bare and uplifted head to oppose the preaching or the proclaiming of the truth by proclaiming knowledge falsely so called. So Hegesippus says the apostasy happened in 98 CE. The same year, Ignatius took office and did the things that he said, and drew men after himself and towards false teaching, and seceded and created a new and different religion called Christianity. One other term I want to hit here before going into what it means to be grafted in and what's going on there. And that is, I want to talk about what the church is. What is the church? Okay?
Hey, Brother Trim?
Yes.
I don't want to go rabbit trail now. Wasn't that around the time that Polycarp was killed? Was there any relation between Polycarp and Eusebius?
Well, we could go and follow that. In fact, someday when I write this into a history, I want to go into Polycarp. Polycarp was the great doormat of Ignatius. Polycarp was the guy that should have done something and didn't. And Polycarp was the guy that Ignatius went to great trouble to butter up and get to be his doormat. And had Polycarp stood up and done something and said something about it, but instead Ignatius wrote special letters to Polycarp, went and visited and stayed with Polycarp, because he knew Polycarp was probably the one guy that could have stood in his way. And yeah, Polycarp was a key figure in all of this. Polycarp wasn't such a bad guy himself, except that he didn't take action when he should have. And he just kind of let it happen. Other things he did take action on. That's another story as far as that goes. Okay. Some of you have probably been told that the word church originally referred to the assembly, and then we came to use the word church to refer to a building, right? Probably what you were taught all through, The church is really the people. It's only later that we start using it to refer to the building. It's the other way around. The word church originally referred to a building, and then it later came to be used to refer to the people. Let me explain what I mean. The word church in English has a special meaning. You can look it up, the English word church in the dictionary. What does the word church mean besides a building? What does it mean?
Circle. Okay.
Well, that's the etymology of the word church, and we're going to get there.
A group of Christians.
A group of Christians. Okay? Either a small group of a sect of Christians or all Christianity as a whole. That's what the word church means. Now, the English Bibles that we have constantly translate the word ecclesia in Greek, corresponding to adat in Aramaic and kahol in Hebrew, to mean church. Not always, just at their convenience. But the word ecclesia doesn't mean the same thing as the word church. The word ecclesia in Greek is just the Greek word that means assembly. That's all it means. And in fact, in the book of Acts, I think it's chapter 19 or 17 or so, I don't have the reference, I have that reference with me. But in the book of Acts, the word church is used at one point to describe a mob in the streets. The word ecclesia. Maybe Acts 19 or so. The point is that the word church does not mean the same thing as the word ecclesia. The word church is a special theological term unique to Christianity that they put in your Bible that wasn't in the original. Instead, wherever you see the word church, the original text actually has a word that just means assembly. Okay? Now that's important because now we're not talking about the church, we're talking about the assembly. Now, as we said, there's two things. Everybody talks about getting back to the New Testament church, but what are two things the New Testament church didn't have? Church. They didn't have a New Testament. They didn't have a church. The New Testament was still being written, and so when they were writing about the Scriptures and making their points, they were talking about the Tanakh. And when their church wasn't a church, it was the assembly, and the assembly is a key term. I'll show you this in the Scriptures. Let's first look at Acts chapter 2, verse 47. This is supposed to be, according to many Christians, the birth of Christianity, the birth of the church. And I'm going to shoot that concept down right now. Acts chapter 2, verse 47. They were praising Elul while finding favor before all the people. And our Adon added every day to those who were given life to, if you have a case, you have most of your Bibles that say the church, the assembly. How can you be added to something that doesn't already exist? Added to means they already existed and they were being added to. Okay? Let's look at another passage.
The previous verse shows him continuing in the
Yes.
In the temple.
Yes, continuing. All right. Acts 7. That's where that olive tree. The wild olive tree, and they're grafted into which one? Cultivated olive tree, and they're told to be fed by the root of the cultivated olive tree, right? Now, does anybody know what the Hebrew word for tree is? Etz. What does etz also mean? Come on. Etz also means stick. 2 sticks prophecy in Ezekiel chapter 38. What do you think the word for stick there is? Etz. Okay, so to the Hebrew speaker, the 2 olive trees and the 2 sticks prophecy immediately click like that as talking about the same thing. Because it's the same word in Hebrew. Etz. Stick. Paul's talking about 2 sticks, 2 trees. Okay? Ezekiel's talking about 2 sticks, 2 trees, 2 etzim. Okay? Now, in this prophecy, who do you think the wild olive tree represents?
Ephraim.
Anybody? Ephraim? Everybody agree? Who thinks that it's not that the wild olive tree is not Ephraim? Raise your hand. Anybody think that it's not? Can we? Is that a valid axiom for the group? Okay, Ephraim is the wild olive tree. Who then would be the cultivated olive tree? Judah is the cultivated olive tree. Okay, we can all agree on that. So, when we get this straight, branches are being broken off from Ephraim and grafted into what? Judah. And being fed by the root of what? Judah. Now this is the third of 3 prophecies of this. I'm going to cover both of the other 2. Now, when I say Judah, I'm not talking about rabbinic Judaism. I'm talking about the remnant, Nazarene Judaism, the Jews that believed that Yeshua was the Messiah and were Torah observant. Okay? They're grafted in with them. They're fed by that root. That's what they're supposed to do. It does not say that branches are being broken off from Judah and grafted into the wild olive tree to become Ephraimites. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that wild branches stay in their own olive tree and remain Ephraimites. Wasn't that Ephraim's error in the first place? I want to do an Ephraimite thing. I don't want to do a Jewish thing. Where did this word Judaism come from? Because the one true faith only remained with one of the 2 houses of Israel, the house of Judah. So the faith became known as Judaism. The faith of the house of Judah. The true faith versus the false faith. All right? Now, let's look at the two sticks prophecy then in Ezekiel chapter 38. I'm going to show you the same thing in Ezekiel 38, and I'm going to show you another prophecy that confirms this. Actually, Ezekiel 37. Starting in verse 15. And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, And you, son of man, take you one stick, one etz, one tree, write upon it for Yehudah, and for the children of Israel, his companions. Then take another stick, and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel, his companions. And join them for you one to another into one stick. Okay, so Ephraim has hope. That they may become one in your hand. Great, the reunion of the two houses, right? Right, we can see that. And when the children of your people shall speak unto you, saying, Will you not tell us what you mean by these things? Oh, great, he's going to tell us what he means. Say unto them, Thus says Adonai Yahweh, Behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, his companions, and I will put them unto him together with the stick of Yehudah, and make them one stick, that they shall become one in my hand. Who does he put with who? He takes Ephraim and puts him with who? Not the other way around, right? Is he doing this? That's what you've been taught. What's he doing? That's what he's doing. He's taking Ephraim. The fact that Ephraimites are being called, we've got people in the back hills of Arkansas saying, I want to learn me some Torah. Nothing wrong with that. They shouldn't be told that there's some, that they shouldn't be doing a Jewish thing. We're going to find out that Yeshua said this is a Jewish thing. Torah is a Jewish thing. Okay? All right. Let's look at Zechariah chapter 8. See this prophetically in the book of Zechariah also. And then we're going to talk about what it all means and what Yeshua says about it. Zechariah chapter 8, verse 23. You're all there? Thus says Yahweh Zevaot, In those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold of out of all the languages of the nations, and shall take hold of the skirt of him that is an Ephraimite. No, of him that is a Jew, saying, We will go with you, for we have heard that his Elohim is with you. Now, who the 10 men represent? 10 men.
Of the nations is...
And 10. There's 10 of them. How many lost tribes are there? 10. So, in the last days, Ephraim comes to these Yehudites, Judah, and grabs hold of their tzitzit and says, I've heard that Elohim is with you, I want to go with you. Do they say, hey, why don't you come with us? Or do they say, hey, we're doing our own Ephraimite thing?
In the Yemenite or Taimani Orthodox Judaism tradition, a ger, or someone who's trying to learn the way of Judaism, there's a time in the service where the ger will actually take hold of the tzitzit of the Jew. He's coming into the faith.
So, does it say here that 10 men from all the languages of the nations will throw their kippah across the room and say that it's that you shouldn't be doing Jewish things? No. It's not what's going on here. All right. Now, let's talk about what Yeshua said about it, because Yeshua addressed the issue, believe it or not. Then, John chapter 4, verses 22 through 23. Part of this is some blatant anti-Semitism, people that are afraid of things that are Jewish. Or they don't want to be Jewish. Or they don't want to do a Jewish thing. All right. Verse 20. Let's back up here and get a little more context. Let's read. This is where Yeshua meets the woman at the well. Verse 19. That woman said unto him, My Adon, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that Jerusalem is the place that one must worship. Now, who does this tell us this woman is?
Samaritan.
She's a Samaritan, but what else? Our fathers worshipped on this mountain. The Ephraimites. They had their own mountain up in the northern kingdom, which was their place of worship, not this Jewish temple down in Judea. Yeshua says, she says, our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is the place that one must worship. She's expressing the difference between Ephraim and Judah, the conflict between Ephraim and Judah as to who's right. Yeshua said to her, Woman, believe me, the hour comes when not on this mountain and not even in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship that which you do not know. But we worship what we know, because salvation is of, or life is from, the Ephraimites. No. From the Jews. Now, what does it mean to worship in spirit and worship in truth? What is the Spirit? The Spirit of truth, which guides us in all truth. And what is the truth?
Torah.
The Torah is truth. All the commandments are truth. So here you are. You're grafted into this tree, and you're told to be fed by the root of the tree. Now, I hear all kinds of people. One of the rules of hermeneutics is that we don't add things to parables. We don't create elements to the parable that aren't there. We don't say, well, the root is. What is the root? Well, the root is the root of the cultivated olive tree, and the cultivated olive tree is Judah. And there's an Ephraimite root on that Ephraimite tree, therefore, and that's not the root they're supposed to be fed by. Okay? Now, so let's get back to the point. What is the one true faith the Messiah came to be the Messiah of? He didn't come to create a new religion. He came to be the Messiah of Judaism. Judaism. When did the term Judaism first start? What's the first usage that we have historically of the word Judaism? Does anybody know? Second Maccabees. Second Maccabees, and during the time of the Maccabees. Now, it probably existed before that, but that's the oldest mention we have in literature. The word Judaism was used consistently by Josephus. It was used consistently by Philo. Paul uses the word Judaism to describe his past life, but then it's his past life in Judaism versus his current life in Judaism, because he also says elsewhere, I am a Pharisee. Okay? The point is, what was this faith commonly called in the first century when Yeshua walked? Judaism. Well, it was a sect of Judaism. It's called Judaism. And Yeshua didn't say, oh, whatever you do, stop calling this thing Judaism. This shouldn't be a Jewish thing. It's fixed that salvation is of the Jews. Now, so, you have two houses, the house of Ephraim and the house of Judah. And Ephraim gets divorced from Elohim, but Judah remains as a remnant. And then branches get broken off from Ephraim and grafted into Judah, and that's the hope of Judah. The hope of Judah is a reunion with the house of, the hope of Ephraim is a reunion with the house of Judah. Somehow, there's this idea running around that in the last days, Judah decides and realizes that Ephraim was right all along. And that's exactly the opposite of what the text says. Consistently, the text tells us that in the last days, Ephraim comes around and realizes that Judah, or at least the remnant of Judah, was right all along. And comes back to Torah. And comes back to Jewish holidays. Because the Torah is Jewish. Okay. There's only one house. I'm a one-house theologian. There are two houses. But there's one active house that you can become part of. And Ephraimites are coming in and becoming part of that house, and it's a wonderful thing, and it's a fulfillment of prophecy, and it's great. And it's not, but they don't need to be confused about who they are or what they're supposed to be or whether they're supposed to be doing Jewish things or whatever. All right. So, welcome to the house of Judah. And with that, I guess we'll close with a prayer. Eric, would you like to? Oh, actually, maybe we should open up for questions. Maybe that would be a fair thing to do, considering the nature of the study. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts?
What was the verse in Jude, faith once given for all time?
It's in the first 3 verses. It may be the first verse. Verse 3? Yeah. Well, I was very diligent in concerning comments about I should have found necessary to write to you for the faith which was once and for all delivered, set apart once.
Brother James, would it be correct to reference that to Deuteronomy 33, verses 2 to 3?
Deuteronomy chapter 33.
Yeah. Verses 2 to 3.
Yeah, are you asking, is this the giving of the one true faith to the set apart ones?
Yeah.
You know, I like that idea, and it's occurred to me before, but I don't want somebody else to come along and say, well then, how about Abraham? So this is the same faith that Abraham received, carrying forward. There hasn't been a loss of the faith. This isn't a new dispensation. Oh, we lost the true faith and somebody had to come along and be given again. This is the giving of Torah on Mount Sinai, no doubt about that. But the one true faith was once and for all time given to Adam when he left the garden. It came to be known as Judaism, like I said, after the 2 houses split and only Judah remained faithful to the one true faith, despite the remnant of Judah, despite the fact that, and by that I don't refer to rabbinic Judaism. I refer to Nazarene Judaism. There's this teaching that the 2 houses of Israel are rabbinic Judaism and Christianity. That is not true. Christianity is not Ephraim. Protestant Christianity is a big piece of Ephraim where he's not supposed to be. Christianity is Babylon, not Ephraim.
So the remnant is the people all along that believe in this.
Right. They've always been around.
Right. That's right.
Right.
The house of Judah.
See, when I first became a believer in Messiah when I was 18. When the internet came up, I started communicating on the internet, and I found out, oh, there's other guys like me out there. I bet there always have been guys like me out there. Go ahead and Barry. Go ahead.
When people come back into Judaism, it seems like sometimes one has to be careful that one doesn't end up in a Hellenized Judaism, maybe including Hanukkah and I don't know about some of the clothing things.
Well, I don't have a problem with Hanukkah because Yeshua celebrated Hanukkah apparently. He's at the temple for Hanukkah, and actually there's some cool things that tie in with Hanukkah and what he was doing there. Because, well, let's look at John 9. Actually, we'll do that, but before we do that, let's get to Larry before we go off and chase that rabbit.
Could you repeat the name of the man who, in the year 98 CE, I believe you mentioned he announced that the apostasy had already begun to set?
Yes, that would be, well, he didn't say it in 98. He said it in 185.
Okay.
But his name was Hegesippus.
And where would I go to obtain that information?
Ecclesiastical History. CBS is Ecclesiastical History. Okay. In Yochanan, chapter 9.
that? Oh, okay. Chapter 10, I think. Yeah, 10:22.
Yeah, just got there. 10:22. Now the feast of Hanukkah, or the feast of the dedication, was held in Jerusalem, and it was winter. And the Judeans gathered around him and were saying to him, "How long will you hold us? If you are the Messiah, tell us in the open." And Yeshua answered and said to them, "I told you, and you did not believe. And the works that I do in the name of my Father bear witness about me. But you do not believe, because you are not my sheep, as I said to you. My sheep shall hear my voice, and I know them, and they will follow me. And I give them eternal life, and they will not perish forever, and no one will pluck them from my hands. For my Father who gave to me all from all that is great, no man is able to pluck them from the hand of my Father. And I and my Father are one." And again the Judeans took up stones to stone him. And Yeshua said to him, "I have shown you many good works from my Father, because of which work do you stone me?" The Judeans said, "We do not stone you because of good works, but because you have blasphemed, and being a son of man, have made your nephesh to be a loa." And Yeshua said to them, "Is it not thus written in your Torah, I have said that you are Elohim?" And he called those people Elohim because the word of Eloah that was with them, and the scripture is not able to be broken. To him whom the Father sanctified and sent to the world, do you say, "You blaspheme, because I told you that I am the son of Eloah? Though I do the works of my Father, you do not believe me. And if I do, though through you do not believe me, believe the works that you might know, and believe that my Father is in me and I am in my Father." And you may want to see, and they wanted to seize him again, and he escaped from their hands, and he went to the crossing of the garden, and so on. Now, what's going on here is that Yeshua's at the tabernacle, at the temple, and they come to him wanting him to prove that he's the Messiah. Now, there's a reason why Yeshua would be at the feast of the dedication at the temple, and they would come to him wanting, at the feast of Hanukkah, and they would come to him wanting to prove at that particular moment, at that particular place, that he's the Messiah. Do you know why? Does anybody know why? Because when the altar was blasphemed, when Antiochus Epiphanes came in and sacrificed a pig on the altar and everything, and when the Maccabees prevailed and they came in and they took all those stones out of that had been the altar, they took the stones of the altar and said, "We don't know what to do with these. What are we going to do with these things? We can't use it for an altar anymore, but we can't dispose of them in any way either because of what they are, because of the stones of the altar. Tell you what, we're going to set them over here, and then when the Mashiach comes, he's going to tell us what we can do with them." So they were challenging Yeshua to tell them what to do with these rocks. And Yeshua, of course, had more important things to talk to him about. But all of this tied in with the Feast of the Dedication. Yeshua apparently was there at the temple for the occasion. He wasn't, so by implication, he must have been there to observe Hanukkah.
I have a question about...
By the way, Hanukkah is not a Hellenistic feast. Quite to the contrary. The message of Hanukkah is victory over Hellenism. That the Hellenists try, that's why Hanukkah and Christmas are like that. Sadly, they've been like that, but they're supposed to be like that because the message of Hanukkah is resistance to Hellenism, and the message of Christmas is incorporating Hellenism. So,
Okay, you mentioned some things earlier about church and being part of the church is not even viewable as Ephraim, it should be viewed as Babylon. And so that also touched my mind about what the take is on the status, the phrasing of the status of the church.
all right, well, we have to clarify, especially for those that might not have been here at the beginning of the study. By church, the English definition of the word church, we're talking about Christianity always. Not the actual church, if you will, which is a term I don't use, but the actual ecclesia, the actual edat in Aramaic, the actual body of Messiah, the actual assembly of Israel. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, so you're asking me what the status of Christianity as a new and separate religion from Judaism is.
Yes, I could say it that way. We're seeing Christianity as we know it, all of these churches around us. We praise Jesus every weekend.
Well, we did a study on that a while back. And Dennis isn't here. Do we have something planned for Dennis's spot, or can I keep going and show him something?
I'm going to sure Dennis is going to be there. I know we've got Edward sitting in it. I wasn't sure if he'd be there. I don't think so.
All right. Well, I'll keep going for the moment and show you all something that I showed in a previous study for those that were here, but I'll go ahead and show now. Let's go to Revelation chapter 10. I saw another angel who descended from heaven and was clothed with a cloud with a bow of heaven upon his head, and his appearance is like the sun, and his legs like the pillars of fire. And he had in his hand a little open book, and he placed his right foot upon the sea, and his left upon the land, and he cried out with a loud voice as a roaring lion. And when he had cried out, 7 thunders spoke with their voices. And when the 7 thunders spoke, I was preparing to write, and I heard a voice from heaven of the 7 saying, Seal up what the 7 thunders have said, and do not write it. And the angel that I saw standing upon the sea and upon the land, who lifted up his hand to heaven. This is the book sealed with 7 seals, okay, in chapter 6. When he opens up the first seal, what did he see? A man riding a white horse with a bow. A man riding a white horse, and the thunder, and he heard the thunder. Okay. Now, who's this guy on this white horse? The Christian commentaries are split about 50-50. Okay. About half of them, typified by Howley's Bible handbook, say that it's Jesus Christ. About half of them, typified by Unger's Bible handbook, say that it's the Antichrist. We'll find out who it is. And I saw the angel, verse 5, and the angel I saw standing upon the sea and upon the land, who lifted his hand to heaven, and he swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created the heavens and that which is in it, and the earth and that which is in it, that there should not be any more time. Although it was completed, that he announced, there shall not be any more time. But in the days of the 7th angel, when he is about to sound, the mystery of Eloah is completed, that he announced to his servants the prophets. What's the mystery?
What the 7 thunders.
What the 7 thunders spoke, which includes what the name of who's the man on the white horse. It's also who's the man on the red horse and who's the man on the black horse and all that. But let's just keep it simple for the moment. We're worried about the man on the white horse. All right. The mystery of Eloah is completed. Then he announced to his servants the prophets who the man on the white horse is. Now, that would be revealed before the blowing of the 7th trumpet. How many trumpets are there in Revelation? 7. 7th trumpet would be the final one before the final trumpet blows. Let's turn to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, where we're going to find a parallel passage to this, a parallel section of Scripture. 2 Thessalonians 2. Starting at verse 1. But we urge you, my brothers, concerning the coming of our Adon, Yeshua the Messiah, and concerning our gathering together to him. What does our gathering together to him coincide with? The blowing of what?
7.
Blowing of the final trumpet, according to 1 Thessalonians 4:16. The blowing of the final trumpet and our gathering together to him. All right? Verse 2. That you neither quickly be shaken in your minds, nor be troubled, neither by word, nor by spirit, nor by letter, as though from us, saying, namely, behold, the day of our dawn has arrived. Do not let anyone deceive you in any way, because it will not come except an apostasy should come first, and the son of man of sin be revealed, the son of destruction, who is an adversary and exalts himself over all that is called a God, and that is reverenced, so that he will even sit in the temple of Eloah as Eloah, and will make himself appear as though he is Eloah. So he pretends to be Eloah, Elohim. Do you not remember that while I was with you I told you these things? And now you know that what restrains that he should be revealed in his time. For the mystery of what?
Lawlessness.
Lawlessness. Whatever your translation has there, lawlessness is what a lot of them will have. The word there in Greek is anomos. The Greek prefix a, meaning there is not, with the word nomos, meaning Torah. Torahlessness. The mystery of Torahlessness has already begun to work. However, it will work by itself when that which now restrains is taken away from the midst. What's restraining it? It's sealed. And then the Torahless one will be revealed, whom our Adon Yeshua will consume by the breath of his mouth, and he will abolish him with the manifestation of his coming. So the identity of the Torahless one gets revealed before the blowing of the seventh trumpet. For the coming of that one is by the working of Hasatan with all power and signs and lying wonders. So not only does he pretend to be Elohim, but there's miracles performed in his name. And with all the deception of Torahlessness that is in the destroyed ones, because they did not receive a love of the truth. What is the truth? Psalm 119, 142. The Torah is truth, by which they should have life. Because of this, Eloah will send them to the working of deception, that they might believe a lie. The Torah is truth, the lie is anomos, Torahlessness. And that all of them might be condemned, those who did not believe in the truth, but delighted in Torahlessness. But we are bound to give thanks to Eloah always on your behalf, our brothers, beloved of our Adon, that Eloah chose you from the beginning to life by the sanctification of the Spirit and by the trust of the truth. For to these things he called you by proclaiming to be glory to our Adon Yeshua the Messiah. Therefore, my brothers, stand fast and hold firmly to what? The commandments. Now you know what the truth is. That you learn, therefore, by word or by our letter. Now our Adon Yeshua the Messiah and Eloah our Father who loved us and gave us eternal encouragement, good hope, by his favor. Encourage your hearts and establish you in every word and in every good work. All right. Now let's look at 2 Corinthians chapter 11. Find out a little more about this Torahless one. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, starting in verse 2. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, starting in verse 2. For I am jealous of you with the jealousy of Eloah, for I have espoused you to a husband of pure... verse 3, I'm sorry. But I fear, lest as the serpent deceived Hava by his craftiness, so your minds will be corrupted from the simplicity that is with the Messiah. For if he who came toward you had proclaimed to you another what? Another Jesus, whom we had not proclaimed, or you received another spirit that you've not received, or another gospel that you had not accepted, you might have been persuaded well.